All right. Powerhouse Conversations, another episode. Episode 20. We got Treehab's Brandon Terrell coming on. Let everybody get in. Invite. All right, looks like we got BT in. Like cut just join. All right, so while they come in, Powerhouse Conversations. What's up? What's up, bro?
Fred, what's happening?
It's good, man. How you been?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. How's my audio and everything, man? I'm coming through.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. What's up? What's up, fam? I got Felix in. See cut in there. But yep. So another episode of Powerhouse Conversations, where we bring in dope entrepreneurs to have dope conversations that we need to have, and that we're having offline. So we bring them on to help inspire and inspire innovation in other business owners and people who are trying to get into the industry. So definitely, thank you for coming on again, Brandon. We want to, make sure we introduce you properly and tell everybody about what you've been doing, what you've been up to, and so just introduce yourself. I want everybody in the chat, send it out to about 3, 4, 5 people, so we can get some more people in. I know this is it's definitely a topic that's going to be one that people want to know about and learn more about. So y'all make sure y'all forward this along and share with other people. So introduce
Cool,
yourself.
man. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I want to commend you, man, for the platform. I think that it's cool, man, that you've been consistent with this. A lot of people talk about doing a podcast and things of that nature, and you start down that path, and it's just tough, man, to manage.
Right.
But I've been tapped into a couple of episodes, man, and I think it's good work that you're doing, and that consistency is gonna pay off, man. So you'll look up and be 300, 400, episodes in, and people be like, man, I ain't even know. So I appreciate the opportunity, man. But yeah, so Brandon Terrell from the Gump,
Yep.
a lot of my homeboys, homegirls in the chat. So I appreciate you setting this up, man, and include me. I've seen a couple of other guests from the Gump, and I'm just, man, super excited about the things that we've been able to accomplish, man, from where we come from, and all the things we had to endure, man. I always tell people Montgomery is a place you just had to be there,
Yep.
you just had to, I think we contributed so much to the culture that, it's got to be some documentary at some point, man, that kind of taps into everything. But yeah, I'm a native of the city. Went to college at Alabama A&M, finished in 2009. Worked in Birmingham for a little while after that. So it was in 2010 when I moved to Charlotte, which is where I am now. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
But I do work all over, have been very fortunate to travel and, through technology and, startup entrepreneurship is, taking me across the country. So I'm extremely thankful for that. But in terms of my work, Treehab has been the focus for, the past 5, 6 years. Going into 2022 will be actually my 6th year in business, self-employed. So, super thankful for that, man. Super blessed.
Blessing.
And yeah, the journey hasn't been easy. I listened to some of the other episodes where you had like Lil Cut, Sidney James. I talked to him. Man, me and Cut talk a lot. He's one of the few people that's kind of been in the startup space that, I can relate to and just kind of understands the struggle. And, like he said, man, you finish school and you just think that, you're going to have this corporate job waiting on you, or you may go into corporate America and experience some success. But it didn't work like that for me, man. I was a decent student, mediocre at best. Went to college for more so the social aspect, but, you know, felt like I got a lot from it, but didn't have that corporate corner office job in New York,
Right.
you know, that I thought I would have with my marketing degree.
Right.
So I settled for, you know, a account executive position that, you know, low paid, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is what you have to accept, man, when you underachieve. You know, but being so, you know, unhappy, you know, just not content with that, man, it showed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my work was a product just of, you know, how unhappy I was with, you know, being in that grind where you got to show up at a certain time and, you know, try to get the work done within that amount of time. And, you know, it really not investing back into you.
Right.
You know, some jobs do provide you with that investment, but, you know, for me, man, it really wasn't the case. So, you know, to be transparent with you, in, you know, 2015, I was working a performance-based job with NASCAR, and, you know, it was something that we tracked and monitored the progress, and, you know, the metrics weren't there for me, so we separated. You know, they let me go. It was a, you know, peaceful separation. I saw it coming.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to save for it.
Yep.
I wasn't upset when it happened, but I left from that opportunity, man, just with the ultimate clarity that, like, look, I got a few weeks at best to, you know,
Right.
figure this shit out, you know, to get
Right.
something
Right.
going. Um, and that's kind of led me where I am today, man. Just that, you know, wake up call that, you know, I could go back and find a job that's going to pay me, you know, below wage, or, you know, we all got an expectation of how we want to live, man. And,
Right.
you know,
Right.
in a lot of ways, financially, I wasn't meeting that expectation. So, you know, I looked at it as a real opportunity for me to, you know, really figure out a way to not only solve unique problems through, you know, experiences that I had previously, but really put my education and my work experience to use.
No, I've definitely been there, so I completely understand, you know, that struggle and that, you know, going through you know, not being happy with where you're at, and going through going through the motions of the job, right? So you're going to work every day and you're not feeling fulfilled, and you're always feeling like you have more to offer, and you're being, you know, put in a box with what you're currently doing. So I definitely understand that. So after that, that's when you started your startup with Nomadic, right? Correct?
Yeah, man. How you know that, man? You went deep.
Did my research. Did my research, man.
Yeah, that's good. That's good research, man. So yeah, in 2015, I actually, so going back to the story about being let go, man. I remember it was a Friday. You know, nobody want to get fired on Friday, you
Right,
know.
right, right.
But you know, that's kind of how it happened, man. And I kid you not, you know, I looked at it like, okay, it's not the worst situation. You know, I wasn't blindsided by it. You know, I was prepared financially, you know, just to keep my head above water for a short period of time. And I told myself I was gonna go to dinner. You know, I took myself to one of my favorite restaurants, Morton
Hmm.
Steakhouse, and I'm sitting at the bar, and you know, I'm talking to, you know, just people there, and you know, I'm just enjoying myself, and a group of women who were sitting by me, they asked, you know, what I was into, and we're just kind of having a casual conversation. And I told them, like, hey, I just got let go from my job. I'm like,
Hmm.
you know, I don't know what I'm about to do, but, you know, I'm going to figure it out. You know, I got a degree in marketing, you know, I'm business savvy, I got sales experience. So, you know,
Hmm.
I'm going to always be able to eat. And it just so happened that, you know, one of the women I was talking to, she said, you know, my husband is, you know, an entrepreneur in Charlotte, and he's putting together a program that, you know, will support entrepreneurs. And, you know, she made the connection. And little did I know, her husband happened to be a guy named Henry Rock, who
Hmm.
is, you know, a very well-known figure in the Charlotte startup community. And he and I got together, and he's like, look, I'm putting together this accelerator program. It's the
Hmm.
second year. It's going to be the second cohort. You know, and I had an interview. I'm just like, look, you know, I really want to get into entrepreneurship. Excuse me. And I have been doing my research online. You know, utilizing the resources like YouTube. You know, talking to people like Lil Cut. You know, he had jumped out there, been in Seattle.
Hmm.
I know he was in Atlanta, and I was kind of working with, you know, watching him, what he was doing at Georgia Tech, kind of in the accelerator program. And, you know, I felt like
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was something that I wanted to do as well. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to go through a program that could help me develop unique ideas with technology, because that's the way, man. Like,
Right.
you know, being in the startup space, you know, venture back technology is, you know, when you talk about generational wealth, man, like you look at those guys who are, you know, starting companies and, you know, utilizing technology to solve problems in society.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're creating the future.
Right.
Like if you think about it, man, we are having a discussion on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram that, you know, began as an app that, you know,
Right.
has developed and grown in so many ways. But, you know, to think back to, you know, where it was when it began and how we utilize it to how we're utilizing it now are
Right.
all things that were taught and
Right.
learned through startup school.
Yep.
So the program City Startup Labs was, you know, where I got my, you know, my entry into the startup space, man, which is, you know, a totally unique, you know, just sector of society. And unfortunately, man, a lot of people who look like us, a lot of people who, you know, grew up in places like we did, have no idea what a startup company is
Right.
or even how to go about pursuing a business model.
Right.
Um, you know, we don't have the resources. Like I can remember when I got into the program, you know, one of the foundations of a startup is your team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, some of the steps in creating a successful business are your problem, you know, the solution, and
Mm-hmm.
then the team. You know,
Yep.
who are the people who are responsible for developing this idea that you have? And I couldn't call on anybody, man. Like, I didn't know anybody who could develop an app. You
Right.
know, I didn't know anybody in my network who was like my homeboy that I could say, hey, man, leave your job and come work with me on this project. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? They
Right.
were like,
Right.
oh, are you crazy? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. Right.
Uh, you know, how much am I going to get? You know, like, how much is
Right.
in it for me? Like, those were the
Right.
questions. So, the program really opened me up to a number of resources. You know, how to go out and find talent. You know, how
Mm-hmm.
to articulate your problem in a way that others would want to come and work with you. And I chose something that was very, you know, near and dear to me, which was marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a problem around how big brands were engaging with consumers. I
Mm-hmm.
looked at, you know, several models around transit. Charlotte has a growing transit market where they've got a light rail, you know, that can pretty much get you around the city. You know, there's a very, you know, easy to use bus system. And their business model is not necessarily around ridership, it's around advertising. So I did a lot of research on how advertising worked, you know, out-of-home ads, what technology was being used to help kind of determine what analytics there were around billboards. Because if you think about it, man, people pay $40,000 and $50,000 for a billboard and have absolutely zero insight as to how many people are seeing that and what
Right.
the return on investment is for their brand. So I really wanted to figure out how to solve that. So I started Nomadic Technology, um, you know, just around an idea and, you know, put some, you know, context around it. How do we leverage, you know, these resources to help these brands and these consumers really connect and engage with one another? And it fell short, man. I mean, it's an expensive value proposition that required a, you know, really talented team of people and buy-in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, capital to get going. But it was a great experience for me.
Right.
And that's
Right.
what really opened me up to the startup ecosystem, which kind of led me to where I am today.
Yep, and that's why I asked the question is just to understand like just going into that startup mode and how you got there and when you went through that incubator process and you had to learn how to pitch your company and that's like that's half the battle is if a lot of people that are getting into business whether they're in their tech startup or if they're just starting a business that, you know around the way learning how
Right.
to articulate what your value proposition is and how to sell yourself is the majority of the battle. Is just understanding how you differentiate yourself from everybody else. So I think that's something that a lot of people have to understand, is even if it doesn't go the way you plan on it going, there's still a lesson in it, because you're still getting those reps in, you're getting your shots up basically.
Yeah, and that term and what, was communicated to us in the startup world that I think is important for everybody is to fail fast. You're going to
Yep.
learn that, either you can get to your solution quickly. In the startup space, it's all about speed. It's all
Hmm.
about traction. How quickly can a company grow? If
Yep.
it doesn't grow quickly, then it may not necessarily be a startup. I mean, it could be a
Yep.
business. It could be, a lifestyle company, or you could develop a brand. But startups specifically are all about traction and how quickly you grow. And you have to talk to your customers. You have to put your ideas in front of, potential investors, in front of potential customers, in order to get that feedback. And
Hmm.
that goes for anything, man. That goes for, podcasts. People
All
are
right.
like, man, I don't have the resources to get it going. Like, I don't
All
have
right.
a microphone or a camera.
All right.
Like, just do it. Like, for
Yep.
example, man, you started like recording probably on your phone, and now
Yep.
you got video platform. So yeah, it was all about really getting my idea. And I was never afraid to pitch, man. I actually
Yep.
love that more than anything. I've pitched in several competitions and,
Hmm.
have won some and have been able to communicate my ideas. But yeah, man, it's important to, find out where there's an opportunity in your market, or if you're going to need to pivot your idea into something else.
Nope, that's perfect. That's perfect. But that leads to where you're at now with Treehab. So explain to the people what Treehab is, and what it's about.
Yeah, so Treehab is all about making medical marijuana more accessible. So after nomadic technology and, really getting my foot into the startup scene, I realized how important technology was in, helping solving unique problems. So it was more so about solving a problem than anything. And,
Hmm.
how Treehab came about, man, I mean, I literally was in a position. So, between like the end of 2015, where I was kind of out of work, and, the beginning of 2016, where I was really searching for, my next endeavor, I looked at markets, man. I looked at trends. I was very fortunate to be able to travel and to, do some exploration around, what was happening on the startup scene, just going to Cali and spending some time in Denver. And man, I looked up like at the end of 2016, I can remember being, at the crib, man, and just watching like around election time how so many states had began legalizing cannabis. Like
Hmm.
Georgia had a program. You saw the conversation in Alabama. Florida had pushed the program through. Just
Hmm.
so many states had began adopting it. And from everything that I learned in startup school and, through my experience with, really how companies have been able to, take advantage of trends in the market, I said, look, technology is going to impact the future of cannabis. I studied the market in Denver and how it had been in place for years and was really setting the foundation for the rest of the country.
Hmm.
And more importantly, what really gave me some insight as to how I saw the progression from a legalization standpoint was, having a very personal experience. Like I have an aunt who's right there in Montgomery, who's in a nursing home, who's
Hmm.
kind of like a, second mom to me. And, I just have so many fond memories of her, growing up, just being such a vibrant, personable, individual. She did hair for a living and,
Hmm.
came across a very nasty disease that,
Hmm.
restricted her mobility and really prevented her from even being able to support herself. And it's so unfortunate, that at a very young age, she's pretty restricted and pretty much living in an assisted living home. So my family, tried to figure out, what we could do. Alternative medicine came up. Some of the physicians have recommended cannabis to offset some of, the things that, she was taking pharmaceutical wise, like one drug would counteract another, right? You know, it's just like medicine on top of medicine.
Right.
So, you know, we were really looking at how cannabis could be, you know, a solution. And we went through the process of trying to get her in front of a doctor. You know, and I can remember making some calls. I was calling around physicians in Georgia. And I got in contact with a few, you know, who gave me some really helpful insight as to what was going to be happening from a medical perspective. And through that process, you know, it really gave me an opportunity to see not only is this a problem for consumers, but the physicians are facing this too, because now they're having to take on an entirely new channel of customer, and they don't have the bandwidth to support, you know, this new channel. So it was like a light switch, bro, that went off for me, man. And, you know, I'm like, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do. You know, like, this is what I want to do. And I can never forget, man, talking to my family about it, just telling them I'm about to be in the cannabis industry. And they like, what do you mean? You know, it's like, what's that? And, you know, overall, man, it was extremely supportive. I got very little pushback, you know, from my immediate circle. You know, I think they knew that if it was me, I was going to do it the right way, or, you know, I was going to do it to a high level. And that's how I've tried to, you know, maintain the identity around my business practices. Of course, I've gotten some pushback initially, man, but, you know, it's so fulfilling, right? You know, 5-6 years later, man, that everywhere I go, I talk to people about my business, man. Everybody's got a personal story. And those same people who told me that it wasn't going to happen and it wasn't possible, man, are the same people today who are trying to get involved and be a part of what I'm doing.
No, that's definitely good to hear. What are some of the things that that you kind of, you know, help people get over that, the people that do still have that stigma? What are some of the things that you talk to them about? Is it that the story about, like, you know, the older you know, people that are seeing those benefits, but, you know, what are some of the other things?
Well, for me, man, it was really getting beyond like the negativity. I mean, I looked at that as like negativity, you know. I didn't need anybody's support to tell me, you know, whether the business was going to succeed. And, you know, I felt like early on it wasn't important for me to try to convert people, you know, into being a customer. It was all about focusing on and solving problems for people who had that issue immediately in the short term. You know, so that was my focus, you know, looking at legalization, like that's all I needed in terms of, you know, support and proof. You know, it was beyond the efficacy. Like I wasn't wasting time, you know, trying to convince people that cannabis was legit or that there was a market for it. And, you know, I even learned that for investors, man. Like I probably pitched, I know at one point, man, I was keeping tab. I probably pitched over 100 investors. And, you know, got 100 no's. I mean, I was able to, you know, receive some investment and have gotten funded over the years. But, you know, in the early days, it was all no's, man. And, you know, it was a very passive no, too. You know, like, well, we'll watch it and see what it does. And, you know, a lot of people weren't supportive. But to answer the question, it was never about the conversation. Now, of course, education is key. You know, there are people who, for you know, very legit reasons, like couldn't be supportive and vocal about cannabis because, you know, their job or their, you know, affiliation in one way or another. And I recognize that, you know, and I think that over time, the market has right-sized. Legalization has provided people with an outlet for them to be more vocal and more supportive about, you know, their position on cannabis. But yeah, man, it was never well, it was initially, but I moved beyond that very quickly. Like, let me focus on the people who I know are going to be my core customer, and let me create solutions for them.
Support who supports you. I mean, that's how I look at it. Like the people that get it are going to get it, and the people that don't aren't. So once you get to the point of understanding that, that's where you're able to reach that level of success, because you're blocking out all the other, like you said, negative energy that's coming around.
Yeah, man, and I see that with a lot of our peers, man, and people in business, like who beg for that support. Like, I mean, it's cool if you're selling, if you got a brand or you got T-shirts or you got whatever, and you like, man, why people don't support me, or it costs you nothing to support me or to share it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that type of support isn't long standing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, going to be reputable in terms of repeat business. So you really have to build your business, your products for the individuals who need it most. And,
Mm-hmm.
those early evangelists, they may be your friends, they may be your family, but to beg and to fight for that support from people who ultimately aren't your customer, one
Right.
of the things I learned early on, man, is that strangers will make you rich. It's
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
those are the people who are going to find your business organically. Nobody in my network that I knew was an investor who understood my business when I was looking for, between $100,000 to $1 million in funding. Nobody was preparing to cut that check. I had conversations with investors who I knew that looked like me, who knew me personally, but I think it was that personal attachment that, ultimately led them to not writing the check. So,
Right.
as a point there, man, I would encourage people listening in, or even from a business perspective, to, work harder to please the people who are your market. Not
Right.
necessarily the people who you expect to support you, because they're not going
Right.
to be the people that are going to get you to where you need to be.
Right. And to that point, just understand your target market, right? If you're not understanding what that customer avatar looks like, who that actual customer is, then you're going to be, looking for your family and friends to be supporters versus like, okay, let me go market and let me go speak to my customer. I can't be speaking to everybody. I need to go speak to my customer.
Yeah, so what I was able to determine with Treehab and how I was able to get it started is, really taking the lean mentality, like operating very lean. So, if you have an idea that you are considering, a problem that exists for you personally or within a market, what I was able to do was find out who my customer was. So as I mentioned, I had an aunt who, had a very personal experience with, her inability to gain access to cannabis. And immediately, I thought, man, who else is having this problem? Like, who are the other people that are having difficulty getting in front of a doctor? So I simply went to Facebook, man. I put out just like a Google form that, I
Hmm.
said, hey, look, I created a Google number. And it's like, hey, if you're interested in medical cannabis, and this was in like 2016, 2017, I asked people who was looking for information. And, initially I got a couple calls, got a couple texts, I got a couple people filling out the form. I started a Facebook group that, just had a few people in it that were kind of
Hmm.
leading the discussion, but they were bringing other people, to me and to this, question about how they could determine where the best support was for medical cannabis, man. And yeah, I kind of stepped away from it for a few weeks, and I came back, man, and had like 50 or so inquiries. And, people were like, hey, I really need to see a doctor about this. And I'm like, man, I'm not qualified to answer these questions,
Right. Right. Right.
so that was enough to tell me that there was something there, in terms of a real need from a market or a segment of customers, which really led me to start calling on doctors to figure out how I can best support them in getting them connected with these patients.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So I kind of asked around just, because like I said, I know a lot of people are interested in the industry, and that they did get some questions about some feedback. But if somebody is looking to get into the medical cannabis industry, what are some of those first steps, to get into it?
Well, I would say that, you providing your expertise to the industry is where, I think most people can contribute initially.
Hmm.
I know that there's a lot of excitement around the industry, and, you look at some of the numbers, just across the country in terms of, revenues that are being generated. You know, a lot of that is extremely misleading. I think
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, if you look at what's happening in California, you look at what's happening in Colorado, some of those early stage markets, you know, there are big revenues that are happening there because they're recreational markets where, you know, people are flying in, you know, they're able to consume and really enjoy the plant, you know, in its essence. But across the
Mm-hmm.
country, you know, it's still very early stage in, you know, both medical and the recreational cannabis industry as a whole. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I would tell people contribute your expertise. If you are a
Mm-hmm.
CPA, you know, if you're an accountant, there are companies who are, you know, desperately seeking support in terms of people who understand the law.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're in security, law enforcement, things of that nature, you know, there's a need to, you know, really help determine what the future of the cannabis industry is. And for me, it was marketing. I
Right.
really wanted to understand if there are patients out here who are actively looking for physicians to talk to about medical marijuana. Why are doctors not more visible? Why are physicians not, you know, actively accessible like dentists and chronic pain physicians and, you know, your general orthopedic surgeon? And I discovered that, you know, there were challenges that, you know, these individuals were facing in terms of, you know, search engine optimization, you know,
Mm-hmm.
really transitioning their marketing into the digital age. And this is something that's just not happening across cannabis. It's happening in other aspects of healthcare. Um, you know, so really doing your research on the local market.
Mm-hmm.
I think understanding what's happening in your state. If it's
Mm-hmm.
not legal, which, you know, at this point, cannabis is legal pretty much in 47 of the 50 states.
Right.
There are really only about 3 states that, you know, have no program active right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but identifying what's happening on the ground level, being able to provide support based on your area of expertise. I hear so many people talk about want to open in a dispensary, and
Right.
you know that's the go-to, and I think it sounds lucrative. Where in reality, man, dispensary owners will tell you, man, it's one of the hardest aspects of the cannabis business because you know not only do you have to acquire the plant for you to distribute it, you know,
Right.
in most instances you have to grow it, and
Right.
you know you're not a farmer or if you not if
Right.
you don't have the resources to cultivate, which is extremely expensive, you know, it's very slim to zero chance that you're going to be able to open a dispensary. You know, and they're very tough to secure. You know, right now, banking is not supportive of cannabis, although,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there is some movement there where, you know, we're starting to see some, you know, opportunity from banks to, you know, really support and provide security around finances. But, you know, it's a cash-based business that, you know,
Yep.
most people aren't prepared to enter. So, you know, tell yourself if you can't open a liquor store or a
Mm-hmm.
bakery,
Mm-hmm.
opening a dispensary may not be realistic for you either. That's
Gotcha.
not to
That makes
discourage people, but you
right.
know,
It's just to give a realistic approach to what's going on and everything that you're probably not thinking about, right? So
yeah,
that makes perfect sense. My other question was around because a lot of people think of, you know, marijuana as a weed, but the edible industry, as far as that, like, is that something that is the same as tough to get into, or is it possible, or is it how likely is it to be able to open like an edible store and things of that nature?
well, I think there's a misconception there around edibles as well. I mean, we know it happens on the black market. You know, your neighbor or your
Hmm.
homeboy may have edibles, and
Right.
you know, the lack of transparency there is, you know, and a lot of people who've been, you know, just dedicated to the market, both on the illegal and legal side, can
Right.
tell you that there's a fight, you know, between people who just kind of have that, you know, hardcore, I've been invested for years mentality versus the people who
Hmm.
try to step in and do it the right way. But I think from a consumer perspective, you know, as a brand, if you're considering, you know, pursuing edibles or, you know, getting into that space, doing it right is, you know, the most important aspect of, you
Right.
know, your ability to serve your customer. And, you know,
Right.
that involves food science.
Right.
So beyond, you know, the makeup of, you know, being able to bring an edible brand or, you know, get a storefront to the market, having the resources in place to, again, if you're planning on creating a consumer packaged good, can you do that whether it involves marijuana or not?
Gotcha.
And what I would encourage people to do, man, is really look towards providing transparency. If it's not legal for you to, create a marketplace around edibles in the state you live, study and do research around, companies that have been operating in states that, have legalized before us. I
Right.
think the business model exists across the board. And one thing I've realized about the cannabis industry is it's extremely supportive of its own. You
Right.
know, there's competition, of course, but, there's enough to go around. And for it
Right.
to be so early stage, when I talk about revenues being misleading, man, the people who are making so much money in Colorado and California, they mainly only operate in those markets because they do so well, where they are. And
Right.
that's what I would encourage. And I think about that myself, man. Dominate a really small geographical area. And when the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity exists to expand, you have brand recognition, you have brand identity, and you have a customer base that, is going to grow with you as the business grows.
No, that makes sense. It even goes back to what we talked about earlier with just like who the people that are supporting you are the ones that you need to be concerned with, not trying to just go all the way and reach everybody, but just dominate where you're at, and then
Right.
the rest will come. That the next question I had was around, a lot of things have been talked about with mental health, right? So I had a friend that asked about just from anxiety and depression and all that. So I know CBD is one of the the things that people go to for that, and also marijuana. So can you speak to how that works into the industry, just anxiety, depression, things of that nature?
Yeah, that's why I think it's extremely important for everybody to have access to a medical professional
Hmm.
who can talk more about their ailments. Cannabis is a very unique plant. It's one of the few plants that if you just look at our human anatomy, the endocannabinoid system, we produce that in our brains, and the cannabis plant is one of the rare plants that also produces endocannabinoids as well. So knowing how that affects your body, knowing how a specific strain or a specific CBD product is going to, help you decompress or, centralize within your body, it affects people differently. So there is
Hmm.
no, one size fits all solution
Right.
for how to approach your need or use case of cannabis. So again, being able to consult with the medical
Hmm.
professional is important. Some people don't necessarily need the THC.
Hmm.
CBD is accessible across the country.
Hmm.
A lot of us see it in stores. They sell it at the gas station. I don't know how, reputable a lot of those brands are, man, but it's out there, right?
Right.
And, unfortunately, having to go and test products to determine what works best for you is, the trial and error aspect of it. But, the beauty of it is there's research that's being done based on specific ailments, how a certain percentage of THC or CBD ratio can really support or help you in determining overcoming a lot of those ailments, man. But for me, I've talked to people who swear by it. I got friends and family, man. My aunts, I've been, giving them CBD, and they just love it. They
Right.
call me,
Right.
asking me for it, and they say that the lotion and the topical cream really helps with, their arthritis and things of that nature. But on a deeper level, from a medical cannabis perspective, it's important to know exactly what products are going to work for you, because when we get into the genetics of the strand, some
Hmm.
people aren't going to take well to an indica or a sativa, based
Hmm.
on your medical condition. And it's important to know that. And unfortunately, people buying weed from their homeboy, the weed man, and,
Yeah.
it's what happens because that's what a lot of us are forced to do. And that's the responsibility of policymakers, our lawmakers, to really help push a lot of these initiatives through so that people can get the support and the access to what I believe is a medicine that, can really provide, you know, a lot of benefit and support to, you know, humans as a whole.
Yeah, and so that makes sense. So even when you were talking about it, it made me think about like, is it doing more harm than good stopping the legalization of it? Because now people are quote unquote forced to go buy it from just anywhere when they're not. If it was if it was legalized or more recreationalized, then people can actually educate themselves on, hey, this is the right, right strand for me, or this is the type that I need for what's going on with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's the struggle, you know. I think that it's slowly shifting in the right direction. You know, we're pretty much at the forefront of, you know, countrywide legalization. You know, we're hoping that there's going to be some, you know, real evaluation on a federal level of, you know, pushing a medical or recreational cannabis bill through that is going to really open the door to not only the research, but you know, the accessibility of the plant for, you know, all individuals. You know, I think that one of the keys in, you know, whether people are going to get into this industry from a business perspective or, you know, just pure education, you know, so many people have been fed this misinformation around, you know, what the plant is, whether it's good for you or not. You know, and I think that in most instances, it's either or. You know,
All
and
right.
for you, it may not be a benefit, whereas it may be for someone else. But that's where it's important for all of us, man, to be, you know, super transparent and vocal
Mm-hmm.
about our support. You know, not to say that everybody's got to, like, you know, wear a shirt or put a bumper sticker on their
Right.
car or whatever. But, you know, in opportunities where, you know, you're positioned with, you know, understanding who the politicians and the lobbyists and the people who are on a local level that are wanting to push these initiatives through, you know, figure out what their angle is, man. Some people are absolutely taking the wrong approach with this. You know, I think that there has to be reinvestment back into our community.
Mm-hmm.
We know that several people, man, growing up, I mean, I could go down a list of names of people who've been locked up or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
lost their opportunity to go to college or to hoop or whatever because,
Right.
you know, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And there's an opportunity to right a lot of that wrong. And I think there are some organizations that, you know, I'm going to highlight before we disconnect, man, that I
Mm-hmm.
think are accessible for people to really tap in with. You know, it's important for us to really support these initiatives and getting a lot of these convictions expunged.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we really want to see our policymakers do the right thing when it comes to reinvestment. And,
Right.
you know, I've seen certain states, man, legalize where a caveat there is that they're reinvesting back into law enforcement.
Right.
And that's not benefiting our community. You know,
Right.
we want to see that reinvestment into the education and the resources that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
are going to really help us be more inclusive.
No, that makes perfect sense. So, like you said, as we're wrapping up, I do want to talk to you a little bit about what's next for Treehab in 2022. Like, what do you have going on?
Yeah, I'm excited to announce I've just brought in an enterprise client who is a healthcare system that,
Okay.
you know, has over 20 providers that will be recommending cannabis to patients in the Georgia market. So a lot of movement in the state. Georgia has just licensed 6 companies to grow and cultivate cannabis in the state. So within the next year, you know, the plant will be accessible for individuals who qualify to receive a medical card. So on one end, we're going to continue to drive patients to doctors by educating customers about, you know, where they can go to find physicians that can speak to them about, you know, their need from a medical perspective. And from a healthcare perspective, you know, we really want to grow the medical cannabis program, not only in the state of Georgia, but throughout the Southeast. You know, the fact that I now have this client that, you know, I'm going to be working very closely with is, you know, extremely exciting. You know, it's been 5-6 years in the making, man, for me to, you know, really get to this point. And, you know, I'm more motivated than ever. You know, I feel like I got that battery in my back now where, you know, we've got our work cut out for me. I'm bringing in new team members.
Okay.
You know, I'm growing my team, you know, as we're bringing in these additional providers. So super excited, man, to you know, helped develop the future of the cannabis industry in the state of Georgia and beyond.
No, that's dope. That's dope. Congrats on that. Cut actually just asked a good question. How do you get a medical card in Georgia?
So the state of Georgia, you have to qualify based on one of about 20 conditions.
Hmm.
You know, shameless plug, and I don't know if this is a layup from you, my boy, but visit treehab.co, www.treehab.co, to be connected with a medical provider. Essentially what you would need is your medical record. So to be able to get access to your medical records is, you know, one of the most important pieces. But I can definitely help you get in front of a physician by visiting treehab.co. We are accepting inquiries, and, you know, based on physician demand, get you in to see a doctor. And, you know, if you qualify based on their discretion, you could receive a card in less than a week.
Okay. Well, thanks for that information. Appreciate it. I think we got all the questions. I think Jamar asked earlier, do you still get buckets or nah?
Yeah, I saw that, man. You know, man, I don't hoop as much. I'm on the golf course, man, but I still got some buckets for Jamar, man. Don't think it's sweet now.
Yeah, yeah. Is Treehab HIPAA compliant?
Yeah, so HIPAA compliance is built, you know, right into our back end. So it's secure document acquisition from a patient perspective. So, you know, all of your patient record and information is secure and handled by the physician. So, you know, definitely made sure we check that box. So, you know, no concerns on that end. And, you know, any other questions around that, you know, I'm happy to accept those. You know, the website, I'll tap it in here, and feel
Yep.
free to reach out to me via email. Yeah, I appreciate you setting this up, Fred, man. I'm proud of you, man. I remember we
Nah,
were
I appreciate it,
hooping
man.
at JD, man.
Old teammates, old teammates. Yep. I appreciate everybody joining. I think I saw Zoe in here a little earlier. Chip was in here. Uh, but no, thanks for coming on, bro. Like I said, I've been watching from afar, so I really been inspired by everything that you've been doing. You know what I'm saying? You've been doing big things, so it's really inspiring to watch. So, man, congrats and much success to you in the future, bro.
Same, bro. I appreciate you, man. Much success to you. Take it
Yep.
easy, man.
All right. To everybody who's still here, we definitely wanted to, housekeeping items before we get off. You can go buy the shirt from follow dreambigsports.co. And also, we just opened up our last location for Books for the Block. Y'all make sure y'all donate books. We've been getting books to the community. This one's on the west side of Montgomery. So make sure y'all tap in and y'all tune in next week. We have another special guest, and I'll be announcing that at the end of this week. See y'all next week.